I threatened to leak a girl's explicit photos, and later I almost beat her dad up to death. And no, I'm not that ruthless of a person. You need to read this fair bit of background. I too was 17, okay, so I'm a fairly good-looking 6 feet 1 inch 193 pounds guy. But all my childhood I was obsessed with WWE and later MMA. I had even joined a boxing gym at 15. So normally people would guess that I worked out. I trained well enough and luckily I got a great trainer to guide me. I was 17 years old when this happened, but I had a full thick beard. I didn't have strong hair, so I kept it trimmed short. Normally people guess my age to be 23 to 25. People called me hot. But I never really had a girlfriend. Anyways, I'm from a very big city in Pakistan and I was lucky enough to be schooled in one of the best and most expensive private schools. But I wasn't as rich as other kids. I was 16 when I completed my CIE levels with 6A and 2A, and that meant a 100% scholarship in my new school where all this happened. The people there were filthy rich, but they were mostly nice people, with few being the rich stereotype jackasses. This was a co-ed school, not very common in my country, and by then mid-end of my first year of A levels I was well known to be a nerd with all A's. Guys would come up to me for help, and I'd always help them because I love that feeling you get when someone needs your help. So this girl in my class, let's call her Lisa, comes up to me one day and asks if I could help her with some math stuff. I raised an eyebrow in a surprised way. This was because Lisa was probably the most chased after girl in my class. She was drop-dead gorgeous. She was a 17-year-old 5 feet 4 inches girl with very nice curves, but she was famous for being a rude person to every single guy who approached her. She was never really seen talking to guys. It came to a point where no one would approach her. I, being on the shy/uninterested side, never really paid any attention to her other than to admire her looks from a distance. So on this day, when I raised my eyebrow with a very little smirk on my face, and politely said sure, she grabbed the seat next to me in the cafeteria. We started off with some problems she had with differentiating some parabolic equations. That was my favorite topic. I got really involved, but 10 to 15 minutes into the rant, right in the middle of a sentence I was saying, she interrupts and says something which can roughly be translated as, "So you really are a nerd." This is the first time a guy talked to me for so long and didn't hit on me and looked at me weirdly. I wasn't excited at hearing this or anything. I was rather confused about what to reply. I just smiled. We finished the whole thing. She packed her books up and left. But I could really sense every single guy and there was really weird around me after this. That evening, I logged into my Facebook account and saw her friend request, which I accepted, and within 2 minutes I got the first message from her. This was around 6 p.m. Next thing I realized, it was 12:30 in the night, and we were continuously talking for 6 hours or so. Then I said to her that we really should pause it for a while because I hadn't even eaten anything since I started talking to her. But out of nowhere, she invites me to her place and says we can order a pizza or something. They deliver 24/7. At first I thought it was a joke, because Pakistan is an Islamic country with laws that forbid all physical relations with other genders other than your married spouse, and having a relationship before marriage can really ruin a girl's image. Just 2 days ago a famous model was killed in the name of honor by her own brother. She shot scandalous selfies and videos. Her name was Kandil Baloch, you can look it up. So back to the texting, I say yeah right with a smiley and she texts back, that was a serious offer by the way. My parents aren't home. And her brother was maybe 6 or 7? But he didn't seem like a problem the way she was comfortable with it. I accepted her offer and within 30 minutes I was at her doorstep. We went in and talked for an hour or two, ate, and she even showed me her new electronic hover thing that you step on and it has wheels on it. I don't know what it's called. But then she leans in and kisses me. That was the second kiss of my life, first in 3 years. I know it may seem really fast, but within 60 seconds we were on her bed and really making out wild. We did that for an hour or so before I had to leave. When I got back home, we again talked for 2 to 3 hours. During the next 10 weeks, we met up some good 10 plus times. I also lost my virginity to her. One day she had this newly released iPhone 6s Plus, and while we were at it, she recorded us and took selfies. And later that day, she shared our own prawn selfie videos and photos with me on WhatsApp. I must say I had a feeling she shouldn't have filmed it. But I didn't say anything. Fast forward 3 months, one day she somehow manages to put her phone unlocked, and her mother spies on her. When confronted about all the sexy messages and all, she accused me of blackmailing her into this just to save her ass. She got a couple of her friends to falsely testify for her. When her dad got to know about this, he called my father that night and literally threatened him how easily he would crush our poor ass and what a dirty pig I was. But he also said he didn't want people to know about this, and I should never try to contact his daughter again. I obliged. My father took my phone away. Next morning, to my surprise, I got a call in the headmaster's glass cabin, and there she was with her parents. They sat me down, they accused me, and degraded me, to a point where I had started to cry and they wouldn't even let me call my parents. Half of the students in that campus knew what was going on, and I don't know how, but then the threats got wilder, and at one point I broke down, stood up and the top of my lungs yelled while I also cried, "You sick fuck. You say another word to me, I will forward every single one of the messages your girl sent me, and every video I have to every single person I know." At this point her dad looked like he had seen a ghost or something. Her mother was quiet like a dead cow. Lisa broke down in tears and her father looked at her like he too knew her game was over. I got up, I walked out of the cabin and into the main reception hallway. There were a few people there who kept staring at me. But then her father comes out storming, and advances towards me. Just as his first half slap hit my face, I lost my mind. All my training, my footwork, everything just acted out at once and I started beating him up. I threw punches breaking his nose, or maybe I crushed it with my hard elbows. It was a bloodbath. No one stopped us, and once he got down, I sat on his chest, and I punched his face like a dough for the next 15 to 20 seconds until the bystanders finally thought someone was in real trouble. And by then his wife and Lisa had run up to us, but the school peons and T-boys and receptionist grabbed me out of there. I won't say that it was life-threatening for him, but I later got to know that an ambulance had been called because he didn't get up in the first 5 minutes and they thought something had happened to him. It was only his nose and a cut on his eyebrow. They later filed a police report. But we got it settled. They made me write on a piece of paper, "I will have nothing to do with her, and I will never leak anything I have. And they will not report me." This means a lot over here. And it has been 9 months since then. She changed schools, but I saw her a couple of times. I pretended I never knew her. What's the most unforgivable thing a relative has done to you? My stepmom stole my boyfriend from me and they started their own family. In high school I was living with my dad, my stepmom, Ella, and 2 of my half-siblings. They had been married for many years, since I was about 2 to 3 years old. At the time of this incident, they had recently separated several months prior and she had taken the kids and moved back to her hometown. I also had this boyfriend, Jason, and we had been together off and on since I was 15 years old. He was my first love, and even when we weren't together, we were still friends. My family loved him and his family loved me, too. We had great chemistry, were even inseparable when we were together but as teenagers. At this particular time, we were off but still had some dates/flings at times. The week before spring break, Ella calls and tells us that the kids want to come stay the week with us while they were out of school. Of course, my dad agreed. To my knowledge, it wasn't planned that Ella was staying, but when they got to our house, she ended up staying as well. My dad says she could stay and they agreed she would sleep on the couch. The next day, my ex-boyfriend, Jason, pulls up. This was nothing out of the norm as he popped in randomly all the time. Sometimes he would stay and visit with me, and sometimes he would come to visit with my dad. He was just welcomed at our house anytime. Well, I needed to go to the store but didn't have a car, so I asked him to take me. He agrees and then Ella says she needs to go as well. I didn't think anything of it. We went to the store and then back to my dad's house. At this point, I kinda figured Jason was gonna ask if I wanted to go hang out somewhere because that's what he normally did. Instead, he and Ella stayed in the truck once I got out, and she informed me that they were going to go riding around for a little bit but that she'll be back shortly. After several hours, they finally come back and he leaves after dropping her off. He didn't even come in to say hi or bye, nothing. The next day, she seems like everything is fine. She didn't say anything about them riding around for so long the night before, so I just assumed it was nothing. Later that night, she comes into my bedroom, tears in her eyes, and tells me that she needs to talk to me. My mind goes straight to the night before, but I didn't say anything yet. She sits by me on my bed and tells me that she's sick, that she has cervical cancer and that she's scared. I immediately start crying. She's been in my life since I could barely walk or talk. She explained that she wanted to come stay with us and the kids so we could have time together, sort of like a family again, except she and my dad wouldn't be together but the kids, and I could have this family time together in case the worst scenario happened. My heart was broken. We talked for over an hour, just talking, hugging and crying. We reminisced about vacations, holidays, certain memories and even times when Jason was with us. She told me about how she could hear me crying myself to sleep at night when Jason and I would break up, before she and my dad separated, and how she would just cry with me, from their bedroom because she knew there was nothing she could do to make that pain go away. I started feeling ashamed then for even thinking that she would have done something with him, when she first came in saying she needed to talk to me. I start feeling so horrible because I couldn't believe I could have ever thought she would ever do such a thing. That night, I cried myself to sleep again, except for her instead of Jason this time. The next day my dad goes to work and the rest of us sleep in. When I get up, I feel extremely sick. I'm thinking I've caught a stomach bug or something because I couldn't keep anything down. My dad calls on his lunch break and I tell him that I'm sick, but as I'm telling him, I start vomiting again, so I toss the phone down the hallway as I holler for Ella to talk to him. When I come out of the bathroom, the phone is still lying on the floor. I'm not sure if she was outside or what, but she never took the phone. I checked to see if my dad is still on the line and sure enough he was. He's worried at this point because I had been fine the day before. He tells me to have Ella take me to the ER. So I go into the living room and see Ella sitting on the couch watching TV. I told her that I had been hollering for her because I was sick and my dad wanted to talk to her, but she said she never heard me. I told her that my dad wanted her to take me to the ER, but she acted like it was an inconvenience and like she just really doesn't want to. I'm not really sure why she's being like this unless she just doesn't feel good because of her own illness. I apologized to her and told her that I will just go ask my grandmother next door to take me. Ella finally came to her senses and said she'll take me, and we leave shortly afterwards. When we got there, she dropped me off at the ER door. I go in and sign myself in, then I sit down and wait for Ella to come in. She never did. A nurse called me back in just a few minutes and I explained that my stepmom was coming in any minute because she had to park the van. After 20 minutes or so, she still hadn't come in. About 15 minutes later, my mom arrives, thanks to my dad calling her from work. She asks me where Ella is and I tell her the story from when my dad called up to the current minute. She's livid that Ella didn't come in with me, so she tells me that she'll be right back, but I know she's going outside to look for her. 10 minutes or so pass and she comes back telling me that Ella isn't even there anymore. She went to go call my dad and when she came back she looked worried. I could tell something was wrong, so I asked what was going on. My mother, of all people, has to be the one to tell me that Ella couldn't be bothered to stay with me because she's with Jason and that they had just hooked up on our couch the night before. The same night she has me bawling because she tells me that she's sick. She sleeps with my first love, the one guy she knows that I love, on my dad's couch that he let her sleep on to spend spring break with us. I was admitted into the hospital overnight for dehydration from food poisoning, and my mom had to leave to take care of my other little brother. My dad was at home with my other siblings because Ella was too busy to stay there to care for them. So being alone with all this craziness in my head, I wanted answers. I called Jason and his mom answered. She told me that he's not home but that he's on his way to come see me. Okay, even better. I waited for him to get there, unsure of what I was going to say, but it didn't matter because he never showed up anyway. I later found out that she thought I was Ella when I called. Needless to say, my dad made her leave. A couple weeks later, we find out that she has moved in with him, with my little brother and sister-in-law, changing their school again for the second time that school year. Not only is she getting them messed up at school by moving them around so much, she's also confusing them because they know Jason as my boyfriend, not their new stepdad, but now they're wondering why their mom is sleeping in the bed with their sister's boyfriend. They even started having their own kids. The last I heard, they had 2 kids and now we're in a family of 4. What a joke. I still can't believe this actually happened to me, and they haven't looked back. Neither of them has ever called or tried to re-establish connections, and I have a feeling they never will. May they rot in hell. When did you realize your open marriage was a terrible idea? A week ago, I discovered my husband was on a dating app. He was showering and I had picked up his phone to order our taxi as the app was not working on my phone. The Tinder app icon covered my face on a screensaver photo of us. We were both 33 and been married for 2 years. I clicked on the icon and went through his profile. In his bio, he described himself as a single man looking for subtle fun. He listed his interests as music, movies, sports, reading and going to the gym. This almost made me laugh. This man had not been to a gym in his life but was one of those lucky individuals who seemed to be in naturally good shape despite eating an ungodly amount of trash. He also wouldn't be able to tell anybody where the nearest bookshop was. All his photos were from our holiday in Europe. He had cropped me out of every single one. He had several active chats with different women. I heard the water turn off in the shower and threw his phone back onto the pillow on his side of the bed. I told him I no longer felt like going out to dinner and he started yelling about how I always changed my mind about everything. I curled up into a ball and told him to leave me alone. Then I started sobbing and he let the towel fall from around his waist. He got dressed in the jeans and shirt I had picked out for him. He stormed out of the house. I tortured myself imagining himself going to meet another woman from the app where we had originally met. I called my sister, my mother and many of my friends. They all instructed me to leave him, and I insisted I could not. I simply loved the man too much. I wanted us to be one of those couples who grew old together and spent their twilight years knowing that they lived a life filled with love. I told myself that I would continue to let him use the app and have his flings as long as he always returned to me. I did not even plan to let him know that I knew. I did want to put him under more stress or inflict more guilt than he probably already felt. That's how much I loved him. My husband got home around 3 a.m. I could only smell beer and sweat on him. No perfume. He apologized for losing his cool and I said I regretted not going to dinner. We had sex and he fell asleep shortly afterwards. I slid his phone from under the pillow. My husband also did not know that I knew he used my birthday as the passcode on his phone. I used this fact to remind myself that he really did love me and then went back onto his Tinder. I took photographs with my own phone. His profile. His Tinder premium membership which gave him unlimited swipes. His matches. The messages they exchanged. The profiles of his matches. I slid the phone back under his pillow. Like I said, I did not mind my husband having his fun, but I wanted to know all about it. I parked outside the supermarket and looked through the window. I saw her at register number 7, the woman my husband had been seeing the most. The woman he saw on the night I discovered his presence on the app. She had served me many times while I bought food for me and my husband. Her eyes locked onto me as I walked through the door. I picked up a basket and shopped like there was nothing wrong. I picked out all his favorite foods, and wondered if she would recognize them. Their messages indicated they genuinely liked each other. They were more than just sex, but less than a romantic threat. They were friends with benefits. He had reiterated early in their exchanges that he had no plans to leave me, which made me very happy but did not dampen my curiosity about the girls he visited. I lined up at her register, although the case were shorter at others. She was somehow prettier in person. She was only 19. She had all the beauty and glow of youth. She told me she was sorry, and I saw a tear roll down her cheek. I noticed my hands had been shaking as I lifted the items out of the basket and placed them on the conveyor belt. She obviously sensed my knowledge of truth. I handed her a tissue from my purse and told her to pull herself together. I asked her what time she clocked off and after she answered I said I would pick her up. I warned her not to speak to my husband before our meeting. At 7 o'clock, I collected the woman. She shivered as I drove, and I put on the heating. I got us both milkshakes at the McDonald's driveway and parked at the entrance to the forest on the outside of the town. By now, her hands were shaking but I told her to relax. I promised I was not going to hurt her. I said I just wanted somewhere quiet where me and her could talk. She started rambling and I could not understand her. I insisted she calm down, have some of her strawberry shake and speak slower. She detailed how he said we had an open marriage. He had claimed I was also on the app and regularly seeing other men. She informed me that he met several women around town. I wondered how many people in my hometown thought I slept around and was in an open marriage. Although such spousal behavior may have enraged many people, my main priority was still retaining my husband and keeping my marriage intact. I explained to her that I did not want him to know that I knew. I told her that I did not mind her sleeping with my husband as long as she would never try to take him away from me. The teenager then started sobbing about how she could never possibly continue seeing him after this supposedly horrendous experience. I lifted my purse from between my purse, pulled out a fistful of notes and dropped them onto her lap. I asked her if this brought back his appeal. The sobbing girl counted the notes and wiped her eyes, which dried remarkably quickly. She nodded quickly and pocketed the cash. I started the car and drove her home. I realized I was paying this woman to continue sleeping with my husband, and I laughed. That night, as I laid beside my husband in bed and smiled at his cute snores, I felt satisfied. Although the cashier was the only one who sensed that I knew, I scouted out all the women my husband was sleeping with. I concluded each of them was worthy of such a magnificent man but would also not threaten our marriage. After 20 minutes of failing to sleep, I got an idea. Why not make his lies into truths? Why not let him know that I knew about his affairs, but did not mind? Then I thought he would not mind if I also had my fun on the side. I also felt certain this would alleviate any guilt he felt about sleeping around. I thought an equal playing field would equal a happy marriage. I downloaded Tinder on my phone and quickly set up a profile. I kept him in my pictures. I was certainly not ashamed of our now open marriage. I copied his interests exactly. I thought that was cute. In my bio, I described myself as a happily married woman who wanted a bit of fun on the side. The matches immediately came flooding in. The back of my phone started feeling overly hot and I briefly worried it would explode. I started conversing with a man 2 years older than me. That's one way I did differ from my husband. I could never sleep with anybody significantly younger. This man complimented my appearance and made me laugh with cheesy pickup lines. I agreed to meet him that night. I turned to tell my husband I was acceptive of unfaithfulness and was going out to officially make our marriage open like he had been telling everybody. I felt a tingle of stomach of how happy a reaction he would have. Then I decided to let my beautiful king enjoy his sleep and came up with an even better way of telling him the marvelous news. My Tinder match picked me up in his pickup truck outside our home. The neighbor's bedroom curtains twitched as the match drove off with me in the passenger seat and his hand on me. His house was on the other side of town and our hands got very adventurous on the way over while Taylor Swift played on the radio. I had never been happier in my entire life, and I felt my marriage had never been in a better place. We were both getting the thrill of new flames but also got to retain the love from our marriage. The man had a nice house on the other side of town. He poured 2 glasses of expensive wine and took me upstairs. We had a long, deeply satisfying time together. When he had finally finished, I asked for a selfie. I wanted a photograph to accompany the text informing my husband of the wonderfully legitimate openness of our marriage. The man smiled and stuck up his thumb. I tiled my head slightly sideways and stuck out my tongue. Immediately after I sent the text, my husband called me. I answered the phone with the biggest smile on my face, and immediately burst into tears when he said the word divorce.